So in this lecture we're going to look at some words connected with the environment. And your 7 words are biodiversity, ecosystem, fossil fuel, landfill, refuse, unspoiled, and green belt. And the first word is biodiversity. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is used when we talk about the wide variety of plant and animal life, usually in their natural environment. So here you have a jungle. There's a great biodiversity of animals in the rainforest, in the jungle. So biodiversity, the prefix bio means life. If you ever see bio at the start of a word, it means something to do with life. So biodiversity, a wide range, a diversity of life. Some example sentences. The environmental program encourages farmers to preserve biodiversity. We must preserve and protect the great biodiversity of the oceans. And you can have a biodiversity of something, of animals, of plants, of oceans, of rainforests. You can conserve biodiversity if you protect it, and protect it here as well. Protect biodiversity. And the opposite, threaten. You threaten biodiversity if you destroy the rainforests, for example. So some synonyms, it's a very specialised word, but you could say variety of animal life, variety of plant life, range of plant life and animal life. Your next word is ecosystem. Ecosystem. An ecosystem is all the plants and animals that live in a particular area and the relationship between them. So here is a marine ecosystem, and the animals and the plants in this ecosystem, they interact, they interrelate, they're interdependent. Eco is short for ecological, so ecosystem means ecological system. Here's some examples. Kenya's ecosystems include rainforest, deserts, and savanna. Overfishing has destabilized marine ecosystems. Here's one that a more wide use of the word ecosystem, to do with Apple. The success of Apple's ecosystem depends on hardware-software integration. And some collocations in marine ecosystem, a balanced ecosystem. If it's balanced, it works well. Fragile, so it's in danger, and you can damage the ecosystem. And some synonyms for ecosystem. Again, it's a very specialised word, but environment is similar, not exactly the same. Organisation, network, perhaps, association. None of these, though, kind of give the sense of life there, certainly not the last 3. Fossil fuel is your next word. Fossil fuels are materials like coal, oil or gas. Things you burn to make energy. And coal, oil and gas are made from the decayed remains of plants and animals. And you find them deep under the ground or under the sea, and they're crushed by rock, melted by heat, and over millions of years they decayed into oil, gas, and coal. Here's some fossil fuel being burnt gas. By using less energy, we'll burn fewer fossil fuels and emit fewer greenhouse gases. Fossil fuels contribute to global warming because they contain carbon from animals and plants. The fossil fuel companies, including the big oil companies, are amongst the richest in the world. The government wants to cut back on fossil fuel exploration. So you can burn fossil fuels, consume and use fossil fuels, and they're dirty. dirty fossil fuels. Coal especially is very dirty. Pollutes the atmosphere. Again, a fossil fuel is very specialised, but it is a non-renewable energy. So we talk about non-renewables as well when we talk about fossil fuel. So coal, oil and gas are non-renewables. Your next word is landfill. Landfill. A landfill is a way of getting rid of or removing rubbish, litter, by burying it in the ground. Here's a landfill site full of rubbish. So you bury rubbish in the ground. Usually you cover it up afterwards when it's full up. So landfill. You fill the land with rubbish. Some examples of its use, the environmental costs of landfill can be very high. The rubbish in modern landfills does not rot. An 11-acre landfill site in Massachusetts now hosts a 9,620 panel 2.2 megawatt solar plant. They built a solar-powered plant on top of a landfill. So landfill site is a very, very common collocation. Increasingly, governments talk about a landfill tax, landfill waste. Landfill gas is one of the problems of landfill. Gas gets released by the rubbish. Again, a very specialised word, but here's some other words you could use, phrases. Rubbish dump, garbage dump, waste dump, dumping ground, tip, disposal area. Your next word is refuse. Refuse. When we talk about the environment, we say refuse. Refuse. It's a noun. And it basically means rubbish or garbage. The things that we throw away when we don't want them anymore. And it's often used in formal language. So when it's a noun, we say refuse. It's also, of course, a verb. Refuse. Refuse. But here we'll use the word refuse. So here's some refuse left in a rubbish bag. The council makes a weekly collection of refuse. Vast amounts of unwanted domestic refuse are left by the sides of roads. Old TVs and washing machines are examples of domestic refuse. Domestic refuse, things that come from the home. So we hopefully collect refuse, domestic refuse, and for companies that make things, manufacturing companies, industrial refuse. And we talk about refuse disposal as well. So some synonyms for refuse: rubbish, garbage, junk, and waste. And trash. Trash is a more American word. In fact, trash and garbage are American English. Rubbish is more of a British English word. The next word is unspoiled. Unspoiled. If you describe a place as unspoiled, you think it's beautiful and natural because it hasn't been built on, at least not for a very, very long time. So here's an unspoiled view of some fields and mountains and woodland. There's no buildings, just as nature intended. But also here is an unspoiled village. So there are buildings here, but no modern buildings, no big skyscrapers, no concrete. It's an unspoiled village. Unspoiled. So there you can see the prefix unspoiled. Unspoiled, it can also be spelled unspoilt in British English. We often use unspoilt, but also unspoiled in British English. American English is almost always unspoiled, ed. The village is quiet and unspoiled. We want to preserve the unspoiled coastline of Wales. The valley was unspoiled by modern life. So we talk about unspoiled beauty, unspoiled nature, the unspoiled countryside. And you can use an adverb like relatively unspoiled. Maybe there's a little bit of modern buildings there. Some synonyms for unspoiled, untouched. Pristine. That also suggests it's very clean. Natural. Clean. Unblemished. And unpolluted as well. Green belt is your next word. Green belt. A green belt is an area of land around cities and towns in which building things is very heavily restricted. You're not allowed to build in a green belt. And the idea of a green belt is to stop a city expanding into the surrounding countryside. So here's a map of the green belt around London and some nearby towns. So you can see the green belt is there's a big green belt around London to stop too much building there. So planning regulations within the green belt are severely restricted. Fields and parks make up much of the city's green belt, an area of natural beauty. So we talk about within the green belt, in the green belt policy, and a green belt program. Green belt's very specialised, so I've not made any synonyms for this word, for this phrase. So there are your 7 environment words: biodiversity, ecosystem, fossil fuel, landfill, refuse, unspoiled, green belt.